Hello, everyone. This is Austin. This is Flashpoint Friday. Your turnaround story starts here. We create transformational experiences that lead you to your flashpoint. And this is our weekly TV show, the opportunity to connect with you, with incredible people, incredible stories, incredible turnaround stories. And today we have an incredible, literally, this is like the embodiment of what I call a flashpoint story. I will be joined by Harrison Klein. His parents were actually Holocaust survivors. He's got a rich story of overcoming that is going to amaze you, inspire you, and lift you up. But before we get into that, I want to set the show up for you every week as we do. And by the way, say hello, check in with this Flashpoint Friday. I will say this, today's September 24th. And if you're looking at the calendar, we're 2 days into the season change here. It is autumn in my part of the world, and the season change is a great time to evaluate, to look at how far you've come, to reflect, to get ready for this last quarter as the seasons will change and the calendar is going to turn. So think about that as you listen to today's show and your flashpoint. But the first thing we want to hone in on is the hourglass, right? The hourglass is our reminder of the show to be in the present moment. If you clicked on here, get present with us. Make sure you grab something because we know we can't go back. We can't go back in the past. It's gone. We can't live in the future because it's to come. We can certainly create our vision, but we want to dial in right here. This very moment, as this sand pours out of here, it's our invitation to get present. Number 2, we have the Thomas Edison light bulb, which is form of a flashpoint, but it's 10,000 ways to successfully create something that couldn't be created. That's the light bulb. And it's our reminder that in every undertaking is a form of success. No matter how many times we've tried and we didn't get our desired result, it's a form of success because it gets us closer to our desired outcome in our flashpoint moment. And then last but not least, we have the cowbell. And the cowbell is to highlight great moments throughout the show. You can type in the word cowbell at any time, and we will bring in the cowbell to highlight those moments. And before I bring on my guests, I just want to give a special shout to Mandy Robinson, the Flashpoint spokesperson. She is going through a procedure today. She is a huge part of our show. I want to send her a lot of love. And for those of you that know Mandy, make sure you send her a lot of love today, okay? All right, here we go. This next guest, Mr. Harrison Klein, has an incredible story that I don't even want to waste too much time on the introduction because I recently met him, but he's been an entrepreneur for 22 years. He's been an educator for 16 years. And he's got an incredible story of having autism and not having it anymore. He had what I would call a transcendental experience. I think he calls it a mystical experience that literally embodies Flashpoint. So because of our time, I want to bring him on right away. Give him some love. Let him know you're here. This is Mr. Harrison Klein. Harrison, welcome to Flashpoint.
Yay. Thank you, Austin. This is going to be fun. And as we discussed prior to this call, we're going to change some lives right here, right now, at this moment. And we're going to make a dent in the universe. Steve Jobs had nothing on us.
Love it. And, you know, your story, when I heard your story and we talked, because obviously we talked to get ready for this and prepare for the show, your story in and of itself is, wow. I mean, let's, do you mind? I want to jump right in. Are you ready? Because I want to dive into your story. I want to access as much as I can while we're here together.
I was born ready, baby.
You've worked with thousands of people, right? Every corner of the globe. You're making dents in the universe every day. You've been on multiple shows, thousands of interviews, being a teacher for 16 years and being out in this space. But I want to go back. I want to go back and dive into some of this stuff that you told me early on. And I really, are you up for this to go back? And
I'm up for it. I'm excited. Let's do it.
So how do you go from like being diagnosed with autism to not having it anymore? Like, how does that happen? How?
Well, you know, honestly, it was a moment of grace. So it wasn't anything that I did that I know about, but you know, what I know is that my story is a story of love. So basically, in the darkest moments of my entire life, all the darkest moments, I refuse to give up love. I refuse to get angry. I refuse to stay in the space of uh, uh, um, not doing anything. I just refuse to be in a space where I encountered and suffered the consequences of a shutdown awareness. Where I was, constricted in my hearing, in my seeing, in my feeling, and I could not live with that. It was tremendous pain and misery the whole time, and then, without even warning, I had this mystical experience that blew me away, and it was nothing that I did. It just sort of happened. So I can tell you the story if you want to go from the beginning, but
I want to dig into this story because and this is like embodiment, because I think a lot of people live their lives with some kind of condition, some battle, something they're going through.
that's right.
And you had like an epiphany and an experience that most people won't have. But I think when they hear your story, it'll open them up to what their story could be. And I'd love for you to share, kind of how this unfolded for you to where you got into your 20s. And then I hope we have time. I definitely hear the story of your parents and how they have a destiny story too before we close out. But
Yeah. Well, okay, so if I can take everybody back to about 1954, okay, I'm sitting in a kitchen with my father and mother having this massive argument. They're having a massive argument about money. And my father, being sort of a depressed and very soft-spoken, shy guy, loses it for the first and only time that I've ever seen in all of his life. He loses it. He grabs it. My mother's emasculating him terribly about money, and he loses it. He grabs her by the throat, puts her up against the wall, and threatens her life. And I'm 4 years old, or maybe 5 years old at that point. I'm going, oh my God, no, I came out of Holocaust survivors. They were Holocaust survivors. Understand that they have suffered every heinous experience that a human being can perpetrate on another. My father was shot, my mother, and tortured. My mother was, kind of, I don't want to use the word, I'll just say violated by many, many men. Because she was a beautiful woman. Beauty was a curse during that time because, it was all a war, and it was power, and men took advantage of people who were beautiful, who couldn't fight back or do anything back. So she was violated very, very many times. So I inherited that fear, that survival negativity, that pain, that you know mindset that was just thick as pea soup, and angry and shut down. And so I inherited that. And when I saw my father and mother lose it at that moment, basically my 4-year-old said, I don't want to live. I don't want to see this. I don't want to know, because I'd already been in this place of dramatic fear and dramatic survival at this tender age of 4, or 5, or whatever it was. And it was painful, completely painful. Instead of having a nice childhood or a decent childhood or even a playful childhood, I'm in this place of constant fighting, constant fear of just being able to survive, because they came to this country with only the clothes on their back, 2 kids, and no survival skills, so and they had to make their way with their own 2 hands. So I'm sitting in this kitchen, and then they go through this massive argument, which has not been the first. It had been many, many, many times, but in this time, at this time, my father lost it. And so at that point, that was the moment that I retreated into illness. That was the moment that I am totally aware of that moment. And I retreated into the place of what we now call autism, and that autism was, I am shut down. I don't want to know. I don't want to experience this life. I don't want to have anything to do with this kind of rage, this kind of pain, this kind of misery. Fast forward now 23 years. Now I'm shut down for 23 years, and I am, autistic. And my experience in the autistic state and the shutdown state is very deep clinical depression, number one. And secondly, the autistic part of me had inability to to connect with anybody. I couldn't look anybody in the eye. I couldn't hug anybody. I couldn't touch anybody. It was painful for me every single time. So I'm in this state for 23 years. And then, in the autistic state, what most people can't tell you, and especially people who have it because they don't know how to articulate it, because they don't know if anything is any different, they don't see things clearly in terms of the visuals of what normally goes on. They couldn't distinguish the exact features of your face or the eyes you have or the body language or anything else. They can't do that in the autistic state. It just isn't accessible to them. And then my hearing was like a bad cell phone. I heard about every third or fourth word, and I was trying to piece together what anybody was saying to me. And I didn't have a conversation with anybody till I was almost 30 years old. And I was really, the only conversations I had, or the only interactions I had, were transactional. What do I have to do here, and how much does this cost? That's about the extent of my interaction with human beings. But I was a voracious reader. As long as I didn't have to connect with anybody, things were inanimate, I could consume 2 books a day, or all that kind of stuff. So that's why you could go through that kind of a period, and that's why a lot of autistic people can be savant, because they can't do anything but that one thing.
So I want to jump in for a moment, because there's a lot here, and I want to be able to reflect this back, because, and you use the word violated. What came to me is, I'm just imagining that this 4-year-old boy, and it really, what came to me is like the childhood was violated by this constant like survival mode, and what was really a violent emotional violence that became physical. And it's like in that moment, like something just clicked in you, and it set you off, right? That early moment, you just set you off living a certain way. And it's almost like you weren't even really aware of it, right? You'd use that word awareness now. Like today, your awareness is like off the charts, and we're going to hear your story of that awakening. And then you get into your 20s, and now you're starting to like, you start to get past this transactional way of belonging, and then you use the word grace. So I'd love for you to just am I getting this right?
Yeah. So I'm sitting in. So I'm going to take you back to now. I'm going to take you to fast forward to about 19. I think it's probably 72 or 73. I don't know. All these years blend together for me at this point. So it's 72, 73, 74, somewhere in that area. So I'm sitting in an overstuffed chair in Cleveland, Ohio, in a 3 o'clock in the morning. And I am doing a sketch because, I was trying to, all these years, I was trying to release myself from the prison of that misery. And part of the way that I was trying to do that was through art, because art would make me focus on something, would keep me focused. So I was trying to focus, and I'm sitting in my chair and I'm doing this sketch in a notebook in my lap. And without warning, suddenly, I'm yanked. The consciousness of me is yanked out of my body, and I'm sent spinning. I find myself spinning through the universe in a tube of white light, and I'm seeing clouds coming at me, patterns coming at me, all kinds of, dust clouds. I'm hearing in the background these, unearthly music, and I'm watching planets birth and die, actually birth and die, and I'm watching galaxies spin. So I'm that. And that big in that situation that I can actually see a whole galaxy, and I'm seeing it spinning, and I'm seeing these planets birth and die, and it's like a bigger light show than 2001 ever showed you. So it's like this show, and I'm just moving at this velocity that is unbelievable. And I don't know how long I was in it. Could have been 2 minutes, could have been 2 days. I had no reference point because I didn't have to be anywhere or do anything. So I just, at some point, I just, came to, and I was deposited back in my body. And bingo, when I'm deposited back in my body, all the symptoms of all those 28 years are gone. Not only are they gone, but my senses are highly enhanced. It's a spontaneous healing. My senses are now clairvoyant, clairaudient, and clairsentient in a way that, I can't even describe such incredible things. And there's this massive influx of energy. So the release of that pain, all that 28 years of trapped emotion, of painful emotion, opened me up in a way that was extraordinary. And so not only am I, back in this body with a new experience. I am not
Wow.
the same human being that I was the 28 years prior to that, but I also am able to see energy for the first time. I'm able to actually see clearly. Everything becomes vivid. Colors become vivid. Noises become vivid. Situations become vivid and very enhanced. I could see energy. I could see the pulsations in my apartment. I could see the reds, the greens, the blue pulsating at different speeds.
Wow.
And I'm watching that. I could see some things that normally people would say as translucent. I could see, would say opaque. I could see them in a translucent way. I was actually seeing beyond the
Wow.
veil of opaqueness of what we consider, solid matter. And I'm having this experience, and then my body is now in a completely different experience. So there is no body. There's only this sensation of a body, and I'm able to experience the origin of my thoughts. So the first thing that happens is that I'm in this sea of incredible intelligent blackness and energy, and it's rocking and it's moving, and I feel the rumbling of energy as I'm going. I'm feeling the rumbling of energy, and I feel it in my body. So I have a thought, and I recognize, because I'm internally focused in this way, so astutely, that I recognize the origin of a particular thought, and that origin is at the base of my spine, and it moves up my spine, wrapped around my nervous system, which is entwined around my spine, and it goes into all these neurons and dendrites and everything else. It comes up my spine into my amygdala, from the spine into the amygdala, and then across the corpus callosum, which are the two hemispheres of the brain, into my frontal lobe, and then explodes like a little soap bubble in front of me, like right here. So, and all my thoughts started being like that. So it's like, the closest analogy I could come to on that is like when you heat a pot of water on a stove, the bubbles boil up from the bottom, and then they kind of explode at the top, and
Yeah.
they roll. So this was a boiling point, sort of a flashpoint, if you will. And
Flashpoint. Yeah, and I want to share this because we got the time here, but I want to share what I'm hearing from you. And I've had the opportunity to interview people who have had near-death experiences.
yeah,
And what you described, and you probably have heard this before, what you described was the experience of somebody that had a near-death experience. But in your case, you weren't like physically, like you weren't in an accident. There was nothing that happened. It was just like you used the word grace, like something just, it was a flashpoint, like came out of nowhere and brought you on this incredible journey. And now you're having this vivid thing. You're like you said, with your thoughts or going up your spine, and they're kind of like a bubble. So I just wanted to highlight that because that's just amazing. Like I've never heard anything like this before.
It's a pretty dramatic story, but I suspect there are millions of people who have had something like this. For 2 years, I didn't have a clue what was going on. I was in this place of, what the hell is this? Because I didn't know any different. And I'm going, what is this? I'm trying to research what this is. And over the period of 2 years, I only found 2 people who had similar experiences. But my guess is millions of people have had this, but it's what the Japanese call this a satori, if you will,
Satori, yes.
a sudden enlightenment. The word satori means sudden enlightenment. There's 2 parts to having enlightenments. One is a kensho, which means you have glimpses of alternative realms of being higher than our senses, because the spectrum that we have is fairly limited and narrow. And the other is the satori, where you come into this permanent state of awareness. It's a whole other beingness. It's the loss of the self and the experience of union. So when artists paint, or when musicians play, or whatever the case may be, if they're really good, they're experiencing a union. There's no mind, so they're experiencing union with the energy of all this sea of intelligent energy that is source, that we become. We are the space in between with thoughts. We are the space that is out there, this rolling energy that is purely intelligence, and that makes matter form according to the way we think. So, our lives follow our intent for them. It's very simple, and the things that appear in our lives appear exactly according to our intent, no more, no less. And if we start to understand how all this works, we see our thoughts, we see our experience, we see our awareness. We are internally focused rather than externally focused. And what we understand, what we find, is that there is no out there. There's only in here. There's no out there. There's only in here. Everything is an interpretation internally of what is going on. So the world we see is an illusion. It's just something coming from us and coming through us to reflect back the experience of what we have perceived or thought in that way. And that's what this was all about. And so, Carl Jung said, he who focuses outside experiences some form of success. He who focuses internally experiences awakening. So this was an awakening. So, and many, many people have awakenings, but some of them take different forms, because I've had many other awakenings as well as the years by. And I can tell stories of each of them basically, and I can tell stories of all the different experiences I've had. But this was the dramatic one that helps people understand that you go from constriction and dullness, where I'm dull, I can't experience anything that's going on around me, to a razor sharp alertness, to being in that moment. And
so I want to jump in, because I want to give folks an opportunity to, because you've taken all this experience, and you have a life experience with this, not only with this isolated experience, and you've turned it into this, I'm going to call it a ball of energy that bangs against the universe here as you teach people, right? As you teach people. So I want to make sure we give them an opportunity to take advantage of this. I know you had a couple things prepared for them to connect. What would you like to share with them now, for people who are going to be moved by this story and are relating to this story? What would you want to offer them?
Well, I teach a methodology that I have is the culmination of my 40 years of awareness, 40 something years of awareness. It's called quantum neurogenesis. And quantum neurogenesis is a 7-step program to get you ready for and to prepare you into having a Satori or Kensho experience, where you experience other realms beyond the senses. And this is the most coveted thing a human being can do, because the human experience basically is suffering. That is the human experience when you're in the flesh. But the spiritual experience, or the higher experience, is celestial joy. So you come into this sea of energy, the celestial joy. It's pure positive energy. It's beauty in all of its vividness, and colors are saturated. Foods taste great. Your awareness is not only what's going on in the moment, but also the ambient noises around you. You experience everything that's going on inside of your body. You can experience your metabolism. You experience the beating of your heart simultaneously, and it's all happening, and you're totally in concert with the whole thing. It's a symphony of going on, and you can focus on any of it at any time, but you also have access to everything you have ever learned, past, present, and future. So you see the moment of your birth, and you actually can see the moment of your death. And so, because there is no such thing as death anyway, but we control our past, present, and future. And if we are aware of it, we can experience what those things are. So we can know what death is, we can know what life is.
So I want to make sure we give people an opportunity to take advantage of this. What link would you like me to share with them?
Well, in the chat, I have put down secretsofthemasters.com. I'm teaching a course called Secrets of the Masters, which is a fusion of 4,000 years of wisdom, of the sage wisdom that sages have used to help awaken people, plus the latest in neurological research. So research is about, in this particular methodology, it's about harmonizing and synchronizing the two halves of the brain, because we all know that the brain has two hemispheres, a left and a right, and each one has a different function. But when you integrate them and when you intertwine them, you have not just this connection between them, you create a synergy. And what is synergy? The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And in the whole being greater than the sum of its parts, you bypass the brain, you bypass the mind, and you come into transcendence. And transcendence is pure positive energy and awareness.
Yes.
And that's a story of love, because that's what love is.
Story of love. Yes, it's pure. It comes back to love, which you opened up with.
Yeah.
And Michelle is saying, what an amazing and inspiring story.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I shared the link, secretsofthemasters.org. It's on YouTube and Facebook.
Not .com.org. Yeah.
.org. Yep, it's in there. And I also want to grab the story of we have about 5 minutes left. I want to grab the story of your parents, because I think it's such a beautiful story despite all the things that we can say about our parents, but this story, being Holocaust survivors, are you okay sharing?
Sure, we're in story mode, so let's go to let's go to another story that comes out of the lore of my family. My parents, as I told you, were both Holocaust survivors, and they had experienced all this incredible, criminal abuse on them. But as they got liberated in 1945 or whatever it was from the Allies, basically, they were displaced and spread all over the world. The Jewish population was spread all over the world, and my mother and my father, without knowing each other, had been separated. Well, I had been separated for 8 years, and without knowing that each of the other one was alive, assumed that the other one was dead. I had a brother who was 2 years old when the war started and was taken from my mother. And then she, in a crazy way, kidnapped him back from a dark situation. That's another story. We'll go into it another point. She had to kidnap him back from where he was sent. So my mother, in 1947, she has a small little ice cream business on the streets of Munich, Germany, and she's walking down with this kind of, back then they didn't have trucks. They had, they carried this ice cream thing. It's just like a pot full of ice cream with two different kinds of ice cream or whatever. And she's walking down the street trying to, sell her ice cream, whatever it was.
Wow.
And then this man, who she'd never seen before, walks up to her and he says, "Are you Helen Klein?" And she says, "Yes." And he says, "Well, I know a man who keeps your picture above his bed," and takes her to my father, and producing me as the result of that reunion.
Wow. This was 8 years. They've been separated for 8 years, right?
8 years, hadn't seen each other.
Can you imagine this story? I just can imagine, like, the war, your parents are married, the war separates your parents in the war. And they and think about this. They both managed to survive the war, being in a camp. I'm sure there's a whole story about the camps and all that kind of stuff.
Many stories.
And then they come out and they think that their spouse is dead. Your mom manages to get your brother back somehow. So she's living her life. She's selling ice cream to get by. And then some strange guy goes up and goes, "I know a guy who keeps your photo by his bed." And it happens to be your father. And they get together and oh my gosh. Harrison, you are a child of destiny.
I am a child of destiny. I am a miracle. I'm sort of a walking miracle, really, in a way, because who goes through this dark night of the soul without having any awareness whatsoever, except to, eat and sleep, and read? That was the only thing that I ever experienced, and we can't experience anything we're not awake to. So what happens is that, I was awake to the fact that I didn't want to live. I was awake to the fact that there was nothing out there that gave me any kind of desire or need to live.
So Harrison, I want to jump in because we got a minute. I want to invite everybody to click on secretsofthemasters.org to learn about his course. It's quantum neurogenesis, 7-step process. Jan, thank you for this share. Amazing. Harrison, you are aware of your pineal gland, processing your thoughts in the process. I have read several places that this is the key in connecting with source love. Beautiful reflection. And when you look at Harrison, to think of that, it's a direct connection to source love. Harrison, I thank you so much. Final word. We're cutting out here. Final word.
I want to give all your listeners a gift.
Go for it.
I want to give you a gift. So we talk about quantum. I think it's the most important thing people can understand, is because it's where we all emerge from and how everything happens. So I've given you a gift and to Austin, and he will distribute that. Basically, he'll put the link either in the chat or he'll send it to you guys. And you guys, I want to give you a gift on what is quantum, and so how to make your way into the world. And it's the most important thing you can possibly do. And I want to express my love for Austin. I want to express my love for all you peeps. And I want to express my love for this life, because this is the only life that matters right now. And it's the beauty and the truth and the I could say the resurrection, but that would be a little religious. It's the truth and the love.
Thank you so much. I'm going to have you back on again. God bless everyone. We're out of time. Click on those links.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye for now.
Bye bye.